We are live with another episode of Commercial Roofing Radio. And I'm really excited for this episode. Somebody that I've considered a mentor and a personal friend throughout my time in the roofing industry is Anthony Walsh. He's been in the roofing industry over 23 years, and he's taken down some monster commercial roofs. He's worked for a lot of legends in the industry, and he's a legend in the industry himself. And now he owns a roofing company out of Wisconsin, licensed in multiple states all throughout the Midwest. Anthony, thanks for joining me on the show. How's it going, brother?
Good morning. Appreciate you having me. Pretty excited.
Yeah, man. I'm ready. I've always enjoyed talking to you. So I'm really excited about how, this podcast is going to go. I want to talk more about you. I mean, there's some questions. I've known you since I was a child, and I don't know if I've ever talked about your history and your background and things like that. So, this is always fun for me to get to know you on the other end as well. So let's just start there. Yeah, I was born in the roofing industry. My father, my uncle, my grandfathers. I had no choice. But how about yourself? How did you get into the roofing industry 23 years ago? If you can remember it. I mean, it's a long time, and you're getting kind of old. So
yeah. So it was in 2000. I had moved to Asheville, North Carolina for a few months, and just didn't like it there. A beautiful place, just work-wise, it wasn't what I was looking to do. And so I moved back to Appleton and looking for a sales job. And a buddy of mine that I knew from high school was like, well, come sell roofs with us this summer. There was this hailstorm in Oshkosh, which is like 30 minutes from my hometown. And you can make like 50 or 60 grand this year. And I thought it was too good to be true because he was always selling, Amway, or was in the next get rich quick type scheme that, hustle thing. And then I ended up going golfing with his boss, and he recruited me and said he'd give me a draw. And long and short of the story was I sold my first job. They did the job. I didn't have to strong arm or twist anybody's arm into signing the contract. They were willing. The guys looked like they knew what they were doing. I got my first commission check. And then from then on, I've always been, like the top salesman at every company I've ever worked for.
Wow. The hooks were in you, right? Yeah. That's funny you say like he was kind of this character that brought you in that was on all the get-rich-quick schemes. I've always felt like that when I was going through my career, calling people back home. Hey, man, you got to come on the road and come roofing. I know it sounds sketchy as hell, but there's a lot of money to be made. And it's I never wanted to tell them the full truth of the opportunity that is roofing because it sounds sketchy. I always feel like this scam artist, you can make this much money in this much time. There's no way. Let's go. Do you get that same vibe nowadays when you recruit people, or is it just so different?
Yes and no. I mean, the type of person that we're recruiting, we tell them the potential, but sometimes we don't want to tell them too much because if they're used to making, let's say $55,000 a year, and you can tell them they can make 75, that's a realistic jump in their mind, right? But if you tell them they can go from 55 to 150, most of them just can't, conceive that. And so it kind of depends on the person, on who we're trying to recruit, but I did have a guy last year that made almost 380,000, I think it was.
Wow.
So
the potential is there. Pretty good numbers. I'd take that any day. So you mentioned that you're in North Carolina and then you went back home to Wisconsin because, and I derived that because this guy you went to high school with. So you grew up in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I grew up in Wisconsin. So I was actually decided to go back to college. So I was more or less looking for a sales job, took the job selling roofs, got hooked on it, and then in the fall went back to college for business administration, marketing, sales. The next year, the guy I was working for in Oshkosh went and did a storm in St. Louis. I went and did that storm, came back in the fall, went back to college again. The next year there was a storm in Wisconsin, so I just stayed local and worked a storm in outside of Green Bay. Then in 2003, I got recruited to go work a storm outside of Nashville, Tennessee, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and I made about $150,000 that year. And I decided,
there you go.
I decided I was going to drop out of college at that point, and this was a career I wanted to pursue, and I haven't looked back since.
$150,000 was a lot more money back then. Back in, what did you say, 2003, correct?
Yeah, I was probably 25, 26 or somewhere in there, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, I would think back then 150,000 is comparable to making like $500,000 a year nowadays. I mean, I know that's not quite correct with the inflation and this and that, but just the way how far money takes you.
Yeah,
a lot of people listen to this in 2023 and they're like 150,000. I can't even pay my bills with 150,000. Right. Like, no, 150,000 in 2003 was a lot of fucking money. It's not back in like the old days, but man, that's crazy. So, you were storm chasing then in those years. Yep. So that's
So that was So I was chasing storms with a lot of different. So basically it was the same guy the first couple of years, and then in 2003, after I was done in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, I'd actually bought a house there and was living there full time. Went to go look at a storm in St. Louis. Actually met your dad when I was at a hotel there looking at the storm. Your dad left. I ended up going to look at a storm in Oklahoma. Then I ended up going to Denver, which is where I started working with your dad and lived with you and your family in 2004. And then after your dad kind of took me underneath his wing and taught me about cedar shake roofs and how to go after, apartment complexes. He was, probably the best mentor I've had as far as sales and really establishing myself with specialty roofs and larger projects. Then from there, we went to Florida together to work Hurricane Charlie. So it was a lot of storm work. And then in 2006, I decided to start my own company. But Florida was fun too.
Yeah, well, let's back up there a little bit, right? So you were in Denver, and that's where I met you. And I don't remember how old I was at the time, but I know I was really young because I don't even remember, I remember this house we lived in that looked like a really small shanty from the front, and then you walked in, and in my dreams, like my childhood as a kid, like my imagination, it's like the Taj Mahal on the inside. Like you walk through and it just opens up to this giant back room. Now, probably not as impressive in real life as it is in my head, but I always thought it was really cool. And I always remember you, I don't even know. Like, I remember my dad did roofing at the time, but I didn't know the details of the industry or anything else.
Yeah, you're pretty young.
You're a roofing salesman, worked with my dad. You're one of the best. I mean, my dad only brought people around that were one of the best. So you being around, I knew you were really good. And then, so I know we played a lot of poker. So I know I took all your money over and over and over.
Well, yeah, you guys, you
would get so mad.
You and your dad were hustling me.
Yeah, you always thought I was hustling you. I remember oh man, it reminds me of Big Daddy. Have you ever seen the movie Big Daddy?
Oh yeah.
So Big Daddy, when they get all pissed off because the kid keeps winning, he's like, I win. It takes all that's how it was, except we were actually winning. You were just mad because we would bluff on everything. So we'd go, I'd have a 2 and an 8 and I'd be going all in. And you're like, you can't do that. And somehow I'd pull a card on the river and beat you. And I'd walk away with $300, $400, $500 that night.
For sure.
Yeah. So those are some of my memories. But as it relates to work, I remember, and this may have been later in life, this may have been around the same time, but I remember riding with you one day. And no shit, this was like the best sale that I've ever, it still stands out in my mind, the best I've ever seen somebody turn a sale around. We pull up and we're in the street and you're like, let me go knock this door. And Daryl may have been in the car. You may have been in the passenger seat. And I remember you getting out
was in Minneapolis. I think this was in Minneapolis.
It may have been. I remember you knocking on this guy's door and you're just backing up. Your hands are in the air. He's screaming at you, getting up in your face, and you're backing up like, oh shit, this guy's going to hit me. This guy's going to shoot me. And you back all the way up and you're still talking. I can still, you're not shutting up. You're going for it. And this guy's screaming at you. You back all the way up to the curb, but you don't step in the street. And then you start moving back forward towards the door. And I can see his demeanor. He starts calming down. And you guys get all the way back up to the door and you go inside and you come back out and you sold the damn job. And that was when it clicked. It's like, Anthony may be the best salesman I've ever met in my entire life. This guy wanted to kill you. Do you remember that sale?
Yeah,
is this just in my head?
Minneapolis. That was in Minneapolis. I remember that.
Yeah, man, that was really cool. But, I just think it's funny going to those stories from that end, because you probably saw it a whole different way. My perspective was different because, again, I didn't know the business at this point in time. I don't know what's being said. I just see this really angry guy, and I know you're trying to sell his roof, and somehow you flip it. Somehow you turn it. So is there something in how you talk to people, in how you deal with people, that you're able to do that? Is there some secret to your sales sauce?
Well, so I don't really sell residential, obviously, anymore. I'm more trying to train the sales team and work on, building the company, not so much working in it as much. But I still do like to go out and do the bigger sales, like the condo association, stuff like that. I just try to be personable and just talk to them rather than try to sell them, and just build the relationship. So, I mean, that's what I teach my guys, and that's how, we do all of our sales, is just work on building the relationship. And I don't remember the specific conversation, obviously, of that sale because it was quite a few years ago. But in general, it's just building relationships and then trying to provide value. In talking to them, they can understand usually if you're a true expert or just, somebody pretending to be an expert, and just the short little things that you might be saying and talking to them. So, yeah, just really building the relationships is key.
Wow. There you hear it. I mean, it's not, I got to be the best used car salesman in the room. It's the selling is the relationships. It's solving problems for the client, really caring about what the client wants, making that relationship, turning that one sale into multiple sales, your exponential growth. That's exactly what it is. I've always said that roofing sales is not a sale. It's you're teaching, you're informing them on what they can get because of the storm or because of what's going on. So this is commercial roofing radio. So we like to talk about big roofs. We know where your career transitioned, but when did it transition into the point to where your focus was going after more big roofs? And maybe higher end residential? Did you go to higher end residential first? Did you go to specialty first? Or did you go straight to monsters? Because I know you've taken down $6-7 million jobs, but when did that happen? Was that in Florida? Was that before Florida? Where was that at?
Yeah, good. So that was, that transition period was in Denver when your dad was mentoring me and I was living with you guys. Before then, I just sold shingle roofs. And Denver is the first time I was actually actively going after cedar shake roofs, which was a specialty roof that I wasn't really familiar with. And that was also the same year that I sold an apartment complex job but never got paid on it. But, that was, your dad taught me and actually another guy named Dave Robards that was in Denver. He taught us how to put together the commercial presentation book. So I learned a lot with your dad then, and then in Florida working with your dad, and then Marty and Elsie and all those guys. In Florida, I went after specialty roofs, so I sold nothing but tile roofs for like the first year and a half of being in Florida, which are a lot larger projects there as well. So that was kind of the years that I was learning specialty roofs and then also larger projects.
So wood shake is something that I even started on. Which is probably way later in the years than when you started. And what I remember is back then, wood shake was more prevalent in the Midwest, and so places like Colorado and Wisconsin and Kansas City and a little bit of Minnesota is where I learned wood shake. So, do you still sell a lot of wood shake? Do you still go after wood shake?
As a company, yes. So there are some areas in Wisconsin that have a lot of cedar shakes, and also we started working in the Chicago suburbs in 2015, where there's areas where it's nothing but cedar shakes. So those are some really great markets for us. We do really well in the Chicago suburbs, where the roofs are like $100,000 to $400,000. But we're primarily now taking off the cedar shake roofs and installing Da Vinci composite shake roofs instead.
Da Vinci. I love Da Vinci. Da Vinci's a good product. I see you posting like pictures all the time on your social media of like these giant, awesome Da Vinci roofs. So that's why I bring that up. You're doing commercial roofing, but very high end residential as a company. I know yourself, you focus on the commercial. And you brought up Florida. Florida is fun. It is a fun state to work. I remember, again, going through my career, trying to keep up with you as much as I could. And you were always, it seemed like you're in Florida just still killing it. in tile and big commercial. How did it start in Florida, and how did it change in Florida? Florida is a big hot button issue because of what's going on there today and the industry differences. What was the first year you worked Florida? Was it tile everywhere? I know there's a lot of fun stories in you and with Marty and Elsie and the old man back in the day working Florida. Let's get into Florida and all that kind of fun stuff a little bit.
So yeah, I was living with, your family in Denver, and I remember watching the hurricane starting to approach Florida. And your dad was on the phone talking to people, working on trying to figure out how we were going to work down there, I guess. And I actually knew somebody from Wisconsin that had a roofing company in Florida. So I made the introduction from the guy I knew in Wisconsin that had a company in Florida to your dad, and then another guy we were working with at the time named Scott Lynn. And then we went down to Florida, and I was like the first sales guy to go down there, and I just left Denver because I wanted to go down there and work. And it was just crazy the amount of tiles. We went to Punta Gorda, I guess probably by the third day I was there, we had over 5,000 leads that came through the office. We just had so many leads. We're like, okay, we're never going to get to all these. Where do we want to work? We grabbed like 5 or 6 tile roof leads that were all in the same area in Punta Gorda that we had to look up in our little map book to see where they were. And then
there's your map book things. People forget that. This is like, they didn't have the tools that we have today.
Oh, man. So we literally took those handful of leads, it might have been 10 leads at most, and took the rest and threw them in the garbage. And then we drove out to Punta Gorda, and within 30 days, like literally on my birthday, I got there. The storm happened Friday the 13th of August. I think I got there on like the 15th or 16th, where everything was still pretty devastating. And within 30 days, I sold at that time $2 million, but that was at $575 a square. That would be the equivalent of selling $5 million today.
Wow.
In 30 days.
$5 million in 30 days.
Yeah, in residential tile roofs in Punta Gorda.
Residential tile roofs. Wow. How do you get 5,000 leads? I know there's companies today that in all of the modern areas that we have, they don't get 5,000. You go to CMR, they don't get 5,000 leads.
Yeah. Well, the guy had a 2-page or full-page ads in the phone book. That was like pre-internet stuff. And so he just, everybody knew him. He did a lot of new construction. So when the hurricane hit, they got bombarded with calls. It was crazy.
Wow. And this was Hurricane Charlie?
Hurricane Charlie, yep. So that was a company called Anchor Roofing. I worked with them for like the first year and a half. They were we ended up having up to like 60 sales guys, and it was mismanaged on the top. And then so
I've heard all those stories.
They ended up going bankrupt, and then in like late 2005.
Wasn't there a lot of people over there? Like a lot of people in the industry today, like leaders in the industry today at Anchor Roofing, correct? Yeah,
like CMR was there. They were part of that group. Another group out of St. Louis was part of that group. Then there was like your dad in Scotland and our group. But yeah, it was just there's too many guys, sold too much, didn't know how to manage all those tile roofs, and like just they ended up going bankrupt. And then there was like 4 different hurricanes that hit Florida from 04 to 05, 06 time frame. And then I ended up going to the East Coast and working with your dad, LC, and Marty at Bright Top in Pompano Beach.
Okay,
that's when my brother came down at 18 to start selling roofs with me.
There you go.
Then, so I was selling shingle roofs with Bright Top and a sales manager with them. And then I was selling tile roofs with CMR, who was at that time Easy Roofing because they weren't licensed in Florida yet.
Easy Roofing. I like it.
And then I was actually also selling tile material to roofing companies because nobody could get tile.
Yeah, you were the tile guy. Nobody could get tile. I remember that. Anthony was the tile guy. So I don't know how or where, but I remember even my dad today is like, we got to call Anthony. We got to get the tile. Where's the tile? Yeah. Anthony, let's call Anthony because you're the tile guy. How do you do that when there's such a tile shortage and nobody can get tile? You were getting tile.
Well, it started because, I wanted to be the tile expert. So, when your dad and I were first going on roofs, we were taking like the manual from the manufacturer and then measuring the tile and trying to figure out which profile it was and everything. And We were actually, to be honest with you, this is a little segue story, but your dad and I were on these roofs, and we're like, okay, there's some ridge cap missing off, and a lot of these tiles are really loose, and some are broken and missing sporadically throughout the roof. How are we going to get these roofs approved, to these insurance companies, because they were giving a lot of repairs. And so we were thinking about it, and like up on top of a roof, we literally were explaining what was happening with the roofs, and the wind was coming in through the soffit. It was blowing off the ridge cap because it was not mechanically fastened. It was breaking tiles with debris, and then the tiles are going up and down, and they're kind of making this chattering noise, like with the tile would be hitting itself on the other tile. And on top of the roof, your dad was like, it's kind of like chatter, and we're like, oh, tile chatter. And we literally came up with the phrase tile chatter, which is now used in the training of Hague, if you go through the Hague training.
So you wrote the Hague manual. You came up with the terminology.
Well, I think it was more your dad came up with the terminology, but I was more or less there, and we were kind of brainstorming. So I have to give him the actual credit for the,
Anthony and
the
Derek.
phrase.
Yeah. So he's like founder, you're co-founder. There you go.
Yeah, so I was the tile expert, and then I sold a bunch of jobs, but the problem is we couldn't get the material to build them. So then I started reaching out to different people trying to figure out, okay, how can I get material for my jobs? Because I really cared about my customers, and I wanted to make sure they were taken care of.
Yeah.
And just through networking, meeting different people, met a guy who knew a guy who, it was probably mafia. I don't know for sure. They never really said that.
I was wanting to bring that up, but I was like, I don't know how comfortable Anthony is talking about that. So I'm thinking in my head, I was like, man, I hope you'll talk about it.
Yeah, so I was like, they're like, hey, go there, go to this address and go talk to this dude. And we went, my brother and I went, and like I said, he was 18, and I had my Denali, and all the windows were dark, and like, dudes were like walking behind my truck and taking pictures of my license plate, and they were like radioing and stuff. It was a little nervous.
So you're like the cocaine cowboys of tile. You're flying into Colombia, meeting with the big dons, and funneling tile back to America. That's what I see in my head when I hear all those days. Yeah.
And then with working with like all those different titans of the industry, like working with Steve at CMR when they were there, and then your dad and Marty and Elsie, I just really learned a lot. And then after Florida was done, I made a bunch of money there, and then I went and opened an office in Murfreesboro in 2006 with the guy I originally worked for in 2003. We sold about 500 jobs in 3 months, and I found out he was embezzling money from the company.
Ooh, and it sounds like
so we shut that deal down. Yeah, we shut that deal down. I got my money back out of it and broke even. And then,
from bankruptcy to Tile King to embezzlement, you've covered it all. I mean, you're, again, 23 years. Nobody makes it 23 years in the roofing industry. Something happens, so the fact that you've made it 23 years, you have this successful business. But when did you start selling? Is there any notable commercial or high-end residential in Florida that you sold? I think you always tell the story about one high-end residential job you sold.
Oh, there is. Yeah, there was a high-profile residential job that I ended up getting a lead through one of the tile manufacturers. The guy's name was Thomas Petters. He ended up being on American Greed several years after we did his roof, so you can Google that. But yes, he owned a group of companies. He was the president of Petters Group. It was in Manalapan, West Palm Beach. His neighbor was like the owner of their Orlando Magic and some other high net worth individuals. Wow. We had to go through a security clearance to be on his property. Just a beautiful house right on the water. And so it was a $190,000 roof back then. It would probably have been about a $400,000 or $500,000 roof now in today's numbers.
Wow.
But yeah, so then a couple years later, after we did his roof, my brother's like, hey, you remember Tom Petters? He was just on American Greed. He actually ran the largest Ponzi scheme in America until Bernie Madoff came along.
Wow. So pre-Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme. That's pretty cool. And you did his roof.
So that was one of the biggest residential roofs I sold. And then, like I said, I went from sales to opening my own office in Tennessee in 2006. I opened Durashield in 2003, but nobody really knew who we were the first couple of years.
Yeah.
And then 2006, I did that storm in Murfreesboro for 3 months. My partner was embezzling money. So I ended up going back to Wisconsin, and we opened an office in Madison because there was also a storm that year in 2006. And then LC and I did a partnership there, and he brought in some sales guys, and we ended up doing like $3 million there that year. And
was
then
that under
fall,
Aspen or under Durashield?
No, it was under Durashield. And
awesome.
He was kind of, he actually lived in my house in Tennessee. LC did, and then I ran the day-to-day in Madison. And then I helped LC go open his first Aspen office in Columbus that year. It was like around Thanksgiving time, so I helped him go open his office that year. That would have been in 2006 in Columbus, Ohio. I helped him train a bunch of sales guys and get that office up. And then, just been doing my own thing. I still was doing some storms here and there, like went to Atlanta in 2008 and 2009. We did $10 million the first year, $5 million the second year with a local company there, selling all the monster roofs on the north side of Atlanta. And then 2015, moved to Costa Rica and got married there and quit the roofing business, told all my sales guys I was done, moving to Costa Rica. And
there
then
you go.
My wife ended up going from stage 3 to stage 5 kidney failure a lot faster than we thought was going to happen. So we had to move back to the United States after about 3 months. And so she could get on the transplant list. And I said, okay, I have no sales guys or anybody right now. It's just me. What do I want to do? Do I want to keep going around the country and helping other guys build their companies and walking away from it? Or do I want to work on building a company for us in our territory? And I made the decision to work on building Durashield in Wisconsin and Chicago in the Midwest, rather than building up these companies and making them more valuable and then walking away with nothing to show for it. I figured I might
walking away with nothing.
Stop traveling as much, try to put down some roots so I could have a family and kids and all that stuff, and work on building Durashield to leave a legacy for me rather than other companies.
That's funny you say that. That's exactly what my reasons were for. And I think if you're a smart business person, I mean, you're a unicorn. You really are. You're one of the very few people in the roofing industry, especially the roofing industry back then, that's college educated, that's intelligent, that knows what they're doing, rather than coming up just straight through blue collar. So, and I've always told people, it's like the few people that I see that have super excelled are the people that are a little more intelligent than your average everyday roofer. So you saw that y'all were going to these businesses that were selling 10, maybe 100 roofs a year tops, and you're doing 1,000 roofs in a month or something ridiculous, and you're building up the most valuable asset in the world, which is their brand, their identity, and you're creating a business that could last decades if they had the right person running it. Now, most cases, those brands had the wrong person running it, and they would disintegrate or go out of business within a couple of years of getting started, or bankrupt like they did in Florida during it. So, but so that's what made you say, hey, I got to go back home and start Durashield. And that started in 2003, but you didn't say, hey, I'm going to stop storm chasing as well, because with me as well, it's hard to give up that quick money. That, a storm hit, I can go hit this quick grand slam, go sell 10, 20 million, instead of chipping away at 1, 3, 5, then working your way up to 10, 20, and you're kind of waiting on storms. Is that kind of how that developed and evolved?
Yeah, so ideally we'd go into a storm like Atlanta when we went there, and we'd partner with a local company that had a reputation but was a really smaller company. The guy there didn't have a website. He wasn't registered with the BBB, so we'd build that company up. Obviously, the model. But for me, I enjoyed the fast-paced lifestyle of it. I liked going to a storm. I liked traveling. I liked going to an area and living there for 6 months to a year, and not just being the visitor, actually learning parts about the community and being part of the community. So I enjoyed all that. And then, there was an opportunity to make a lot of money in a short period of time, but to make 6 figures or more, it is a lot of work. You got to put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, so it's quick money, but it's, you do have to put in a lot of work. And I just enjoyed the fast-paced lifestyle. I liked going into a community where I knew nothing about it, and then locking down a neighborhood, as a sales guy. And then as I got older and graduated and started running companies, I loved it when my guys would go in to a community in Evansville, Indiana, and lock down an entire neighborhood for 6 weeks before another contractor even shows up. I just like that. And so for me, when I decided to start working on building Durashield, fortunately from Wisconsin to Chicago, we have multiple storms every year.
Yeah.
So I was able to still have that storm I guess they would call it storm catching now, right? So instead of chasing a storm, we're already pre-set up in all of these markets, established with references that we've built over the last however many years. So if a good Cedar Shake storm hits Chicago, we have 30 Da Vinci references, and we're already set up. We're not getting set up. So because we cover from Wisconsin to Chicago, I still get the benefits of the fast pace of the storms and the storm chasing, storm catching, but also at the same time, we're able to start building our retail market. Like we get a lot of referrals from Da Vinci on specialty roofs that are retail jobs, or we're getting jobs from management companies that maybe we did the original building for them that was storm damaged, but now we've built a relationship and we're doing retail jobs for those management companies now. So I would say probably 90% of our work is still storm damage and 10% is probably retail, but we're seeing that retail number grow every single year.
Every single year. I mean, that's the dream. You've done the dream that everybody's wanted to do, was to go back home and create a brand that matters and can sustain throughout your lifetime and through your child's lifetime and everything. I always look at what you're doing as absolutely amazing. So that's how the brand developed, and that's your strategy with Durashield and storm catching. But what else has made it so successful at Durashield? You guys do, how much percentage residential versus commercial out of your residential is that? Yeah, how much difference, what's your residential versus commercial difference?
So it's probably 80%, 75-80% residential, and then 25% or so large losses is what we would call them.
Yep.
Not so much flat roofs per se. That's something we're actually getting more into this year with some certifications through some manufacturers. But last year we did several $500,000 condo projects, apartment jobs, stuff like that. So, and then you throw in a few $400,000 Da Vinci jobs. There are residential. Those are large, so large, are pretty much like a commercial job.
They're pretty much commercial. So with National Claims Advisors, we are a national pre-litigation law firm that focuses on commercial, but we still will take very high-end residential because it might as well be commercial. I mean, it's a little bit of different sell because that's a person, that's a consumer. They have different wants and different needs and different objections to get over as a roofer. They care more about price. They care more about a lot of little things. Not your average consumer because they're very high-end, but they're very similar versus a business where it's business-oriented. You're solving business problems. So that's how you created Durashield. Does culture have anything to do with that? Does, your operations, is there any secret sauce there?
Well, as far as being able to sell larger projects, so you did mention it earlier. So the largest project I've ever sold was a $6.6 million tile roofing project in Naples, Florida after Hurricane Irma. I guess it would have been 2018 or so, 2019, somewhere like that.
Wow.
And so how that ended up happening was strictly building relationships. So we do a lot of condo associations. We've probably done like 30 or 40 of them with Durashield, and I've sold, and my guys have sold over the years. And the reason why we do so well is because it's just building those relationships. And how I ended up getting that job is I was inspecting a condo roof in Florida in this neighborhood on a Saturday. And it wasn't necessarily a great lead. They had some issues with their insurance company and being an ACV policy. But I was inspecting that roof, and a guy was walking his dog, and he waited for me to get off the roof. So I went down and talked to him. And it was a guy, he had a house just a couple blocks away. He's like, hey, I'm trying to get somebody to come look at my roof. I've got a house around the corner. Would you come take a look at it? I said, well, I really don't do residential. I do these larger projects like this condo here, but I'll tell you what, it's a Saturday. I'll come and see you. And wasn't super excited about going over there, but if I could sell, pick up one residential roof that's $100,000, at least pays for some rent and some gas.
Yeah.
And so I went and looked at his roof.
Pays some rent and gas. No big deal. Not real sure. I'll take it.
So I went and looked at his roof, and I just reiterated how I normally don't deal with residential. I deal with large losses, and he asked me if I had been to the condo around the corner. He's like, have you been to Montreux around the corner? I'm like, I've stopped by there many times. I haven't been able to catch anybody that gives me the right information. He says, well, I know a guy on the board. They call him the Gestapo, and we're going to dinner tonight. I said, awesome. He's like, give me an extra card. I'll give it to you. Give it to him. And I said, cool. He gave me his name. His name's Al Noto. A couple days go by. I don't hear from the guy, but I'm thinking about it because this is like one of the crown jewels in this gated community. And so I ended up seeing the residential guy a couple of days later because I had to stop by and have him sign off on something. And I mentioned to him how I hadn't heard anything from his contact. And he's like, well, let me give him a call again. So he called the guy again. I left his house. He called the guy again. And I was pulling into our office parking lot because, I was helping manage and run this office for my buddy. And I get the phone call, and the guy's like, hey, Anthony, this is Al Noto from Montreux Condo Association. He's like, my buddy just gave me your name, and I apologize. He gave me your card last week, and I thought if you were doing his house, there's no way you'd be doing our large project. But then he explained to me today that you do large projects like ours. You normally don't do houses like his. And I'm like, yeah, that's correct. Our company does residential, but me personally, I don't. And so he was like, we'd like to have you come over for a meeting to meet with a couple of the board members. It was like in 2 days' time, like not the next day, but the following day.
Wow.
Or no, it actually was the next day at 3 o'clock, and this was like 10 o'clock in the morning the day before. So I immediately hung up the phone with him. I ordered the Eagle View measurements. I snuck into the neighborhood through a code that I already had, flew my drone. The next day, I stayed up pretty much until 1 o'clock in the morning, put together a whole presentation similar to like what your dad taught me to do in 03. Met with them the next day, had a complete estimate put together building by building, and I was the third contractor to give a presentation. I was like $1 million higher than the next closest bid. I had Harvey Cohen fly in and help do the presentation. He was there for like the last 5 minutes. And he basically just reiterated everything I said. They had given him like $250,000 to repair the roofs. I said, I'm going to work with you and Harvey. We can help get all of your roofs approved. You have enough damage to get them approved. We'll do the job based on whatever you get from your insurance company, but you have to work with the attorney. And they were just loving everything I said. So Harvey and I leave. We walk down the stairs, and we're just about to close the door. Harvey walked out first. I'm pulling the door closed, and I hear Al Noto upstairs saying, now that was impressive. I looked at Harvey. I said, we got it. Dude, 10 minutes later, I'm dropping Harvey off at his at the private airport because he had his plane there.
Yeah.
I just dropped him off. I'm getting text messages and phone calls. He's like, you got the job. You got the job. So Al Noto called to tell me we got the job. And, of course, I had to get all approved and everything, but it ended up being a $6.6 million tile roofing job.
Wow. That story tells so much about this business, how to do commercial, utilizing relationships. I do workshops for other roofing companies that are trying to get into commercial because, again, we only do commercial. And I tell them all the time, use your resources, use your relationships, build relationships. So had you not been gracious enough to take care of that small residential roof, you would have never got it.
$1,000 residential roof too, by the way.
Yeah, that's small. That's what's so funny about it. Like people today, any residential guy would be drooling over a $150,000 roof, but that was too small for you, and it really was because you only focus on these bigger ones. And so you're there, you do service. You do a great job for that client. Had you not done a great job, had you just been like, one, if you would have said no. Two, if you wouldn't have had great customer service. And three, you pushed him. You asked for the referral. You made it easy for him. Here's my card. Call him again. Like, don't stop. And like you said, you stopped by that place many times. And then you go into the presentation, the proposal. And Daryl, it's funny, he's always been big on that, presentation, proposal. And so many people wouldn't go that extra length. And the next day, people could have been afraid and just said no and turned it down because they wouldn't have been prepared. But you gripped it, you ripped it, you got the hell out there, got everything put together.
They just wanted to get together for a meeting to have a talk. I took it upon myself to put the whole presentation with an estimate together. And they were, number one, blown out. They're like, you did this since yesterday? I'm like yep.
Fast.
They were like, wow. They're like, well, you're about $1 million something. It was like $1.5 million more than our other top bid. I'm like, yep.
I always judge that. If I've got a service tech coming to my house for an AC or something, I judge them just like I would if I'm treating business. It's like, how much effort are they putting in now to earn my business? Because that'll directly relate after the contract's already signed. If you're not putting in 110% effort to begin with to earn the business, what happens after you become complacent after that signature signed? What are you going to do for them? If you're half-assing it now, boy, once you get that contract signed, you're really going to half-ass it and you're going to do nothing. So going above and beyond to begin with is huge, and that sets the tone of the entire job. But another thing that is huge is bringing in Harvey Cohen. I mean, that's exactly what I do at National Claims Advisors. I'm constantly flying all over the country for people, helping them close their deals. And it's something as simple as, yeah, Anthony with Durashield is the best company in the world. Like, they are the company that I would recommend. If you had called me first, I'd bring Anthony in just to pay him to be an expert on the job. There's nobody I trust greater than Anthony at Durashield. In just those few statements alone, you go from here to here, because you're not talking about yourself. Somebody else is talking about you. That's third-party affirmation. They're going to trust what I say because I'm not you. I'm not bragging. I'm bragging on you. And that's, again, there's a lot more truth to that. And then just showing that it's not just a guy and a truck. It is a team that's going after this. Because
100%.
I always say anytime over $1 million, you need some sort of representation to help you get that ball through the hoop or through the end zone. So $6.6 million, you need to start that way. You got to plan. You got to get the client prepared. Do you do that a lot still today, bringing in your resources? I know you utilize DaVinci. You probably have the local rep come in. That's why I say use a manufacturer rep to come help you as well. Use a supplier rep to come help you.
So my brother sells a lot of condo associations and higher end roofs and stuff like that. So, you know, when he's doing his presentations, I mean, he's saying you're not just getting me, you're getting a team. You know, of individuals that's going to help you because, you know, Mr. HOA president, you got a $500,000 loss here. Your insurance company is probably not going to come out here and just write a check for the right amount and write, you know, there's usually, like you said, you're going to have to get somebody involved. And here, you know, it doesn't even have to be $1 million project in Wisconsin where we're having to get a public adjuster or somebody involved to help get it across the line, right? So that's definitely part of our presentation and our pitch is when we're dealing on these larger losses. It's like, hey, you're not just getting me, the sales rep or the project manager, but, you know, we're also Hague certified, which, you know, we can talk about whether that's really credible or not, right? But and you're getting,
but it's an accreditation. You know, it means a lot to them.
Yeah. You're getting our team of public adjusters and attorneys that we work with that if we run into a snag, we can bring in. You know, we've got experience doing these large projects. So, you know, obviously the first couple that you do, you kind of fake it till you make it, and then you start getting more, obviously. But now when we can give them a list of 30 or 4 condo associations, you know, we actually joke, and I said this one time at one of my brother's presentations because I was there, and we still crack up about it. I said, you know, we do a lot of condos because we do a lot of condos. And all the board members were shaking their head, yeah. And then when we were laughing so hard. My brother's like, did you just say we do a lot of condos because we do a lot of condos? I'm like, yeah, but it's true. And they were all shaking their head, yeah, and they signed. Yeah.
So. We do a lot of condos because we do a lot of condos. That is the truest statement, though, because you know, you're going to keep getting referred. It's all about that rapport and that your book of business that you've done previously. To be able to show them that you can do what you say you're going to do by, hey, look at all these ones we did. It's going to keep speaking for itself. You do a lot of condos because you do a lot of condos. I love it. Man, that's a good one. Well, I want to transition into probably my favorite part. I do like learning about you and hearing about you, but I really enjoy stumping you on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So, what we're going to do, you've seen Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, correct?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Is that the greatest game show ever made, or is it top 3, or what do you think?
I mean, I can't say I really watch TV anymore these days a lot, but I do remember it being very entertaining and like suspenseful.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I wish I had the music. I need a button to like press the music, or something like that. But we're gonna go ahead and jump into that. So it's a little bit different version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. For instance, we don't have an audience, so you can't ask an audience as a lifeline. But you do get 2 lifelines. One of them is 50-50, and one of them is phone a friend. So you do have those 2 lifelines. This one's going to be kind of fun because Nick Perrette, who Commercial Roofing Radio is Nick Perret's podcast. He started it last year. This is the second season. Now, he scaled himself out of his business. He made an exit this year and moved on to starting a new business, Tech Startup Insights, BetterBoss.io. And so now he passed the torch to me, and I'm hosting it. Well, my first episode was having him as a guest on his previous podcast. It just aired last week. But he's also from Wisconsin. So I've got a couple of the same questions. So if you watched that episode, you'll remember what he got wrong and what he didn't. So Wisconsin is a place that gets a lot of big hail. You need big hail to damage big roofs, especially jumbo wood shakes or something in that wood shake realm that you're going to go back with a Da Vinci slate. So last year actually had the third largest recorded hail in Wisconsin history. How large was that hailstone? Was that A, 3-inch, B, 4.5 inch, C, 8-inch, or D, 6.25 inch?
4.5.
4.5, just right off the bat. You don't even need, it's 4.5. You probably worked that hailstorm. Yep. Is that your final answer? Are you sure, though?
Yeah.
Are you sure it wasn't a 3 or an 8 or 6?
I'm sure.
Okay, you're correct. You got it right off the bat. That one was probably too easy for you. I shouldn't have done that one. So you're 1 out of 1. You got that one. We're gonna stump you.
You tried to talk me out of it too.
I did. I'm trying. I want you to fail. I want you to fail at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It's my job. I got to make it hard for you. You guys think Regis was on their side, but Regis was not on their side. You'll get a prize in the mail. You'll get something in the mail. It's going to be a surprise. Not just a prize, it's a surprise. So the next one, being in that Wisconsin area, most people are cheeseheads. They are big Packers fans. Are you a big Packers guy, Anthony?
Not so much anymore, but I'm an Aaron Rodgers fan.
Perfect. Most people are Aaron Rodgers fans. So this is an Aaron Rodgers question. Aaron Rodgers, he holds a lot of titles and records and things like that. One of the records that he holds is the lowest interception percentage in a season. What year was that? Was that A, 2018, B, 2016, C, 2022, or D, 2020?
2016.
2016. Again, the confidence. You just know it's 2016.
Yeah.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
2016.
Yeah.
2018 was the lowest. I think 2016 was a really good year as well. So, which it's funny, I'm just making up the other answers. I'm just throwing numbers out there and dates out there. So I didn't know this.
I figured it was.
But Nick said 2016 he won like MVP that year or something like that.
Yep, that's what I was thinking too.
Yep. So I guess I picked a good dummy year to throw you off.
That was a good question.
Well, you did good. I think you two tied. I'm pretty sure he got the 2018 wrong. I think he got the 4.5 inch correct as well, just because he thought 8 inch, 6 inch was too big and 3 inch was too small. Process of elimination there. So we already went over our experience playing cards, playing poker. Obviously, you're not very good compared to me, but you're a good poker player.
I wouldn't say good.
Well, you're good at reading people, and that is a key talent and skill when it comes to sales. So that's why I want to bring that up. But this is a poker question, and we were playing Texas Hold'em at a time, but with any poker game, you've got the pile that you discard the cards in. What exactly is that called? Is that called A, the flop, B, the trash, C, the draw, or D, the muck?
The draw. No.
And again, you're just going to go straight into this. No lifelines, no nothing.
Well, it's not the flop. I know that. What were the choices? Say it again.
The flop, the trash, the draw, or the muck?
Muck.
Now you're going with the muck. So you've changed from the draw to the muck.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
All right, you're correct. Man, I shouldn't have kept talking. I should have shut up and let you pick the draw.
Well, the draw. I was just thinking about the draw. That doesn't make sense. That wouldn't be the discard. That's the draw. It's not
That's
the
draw.
flop. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. Well, man, you're doing pretty well right now. You're 2 out of 3, and with the last question. So, this last question, you're a big Da Vinci guy, big fan of Da Vinci. Da Vinci loves you. You sell a lot of their roofs. It is such a beautiful, high quality product. I didn't know exactly how long Da Vinci has been around. So that is going to be where the question is. What year did Da Vinci start? When were they founded? When did they start? Is that A, 1989, B, 1992, C, 2000, or D, 1999?
I might have to call my Da Vinci rep.
You better hope he answers. He better hope he knows it. So
I know that would be really embarrassing, right?
yeah, if he gets it wrong.
Oh man, let me see if I can find this number. Year started.
So use your resources, guys. This is all about relationships. They should be available to help you close jobs and help you win game shows.
All right, I'm gonna call him just because it's Da Vinci.
Yeah, he's got to. Got to.
I think I know the answer though.
You should put it on speakerphone. There you
It's
go.
on speaker.
Let our guests hear it.
Better get it right.
Oh man, it's opportunity calling, man. Better answer it.
Oh man, come on, Gus.
Please listen to this message very carefully. We have reached Gus McCrackles, and I will be out of the office on Tuesday, March 28th, and returning on Monday, April 2nd.
Oh, he's out of the office till April 2nd.
Out of the office.
All right, I think I know the answer.
Okay.
1999.
You're thinking 99. Man,
Yeah.
that's what, 24 years ago? Only been around 24 years? Putting on 50-year roofs?
I
You
think so.
sure it's not 89? Okay. Is that your final
I
answer?
think yeah.
That's your final answer, 1999. You got it? 3 out of 4. Good job. I think you've tied for the best so far.
Yeah, I hope he was going to answer.
Yeah, man. I tried to stump you with the 89 and with the 2000, but no, you got it.
Yeah. Sweet.
Well, there you go. And that's a wrap for Commercial Roofing Radio. Real quick, I want to give you a shout out if there's anybody listening at home that, wants to work with Durashield or wants to work for Durashield or might have a condo that you could help them out with because you do a lot of condos. How do I get a hold of these people? Or how do we get a hold of you?
Durashieldcontracting.com is probably the easiest way because then you can find the local office closest to you in Wisconsin or Northern Illinois. Otherwise, 920-738-ROOF.
Perfect. Well, Anthony, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. I definitely want you on again at some point in time. I like just sharing stories with you and chatting. Thank you.
Good time, brother. Appreciate you.